Hi guys, welcome to the Modern Alchemist channel. This is the Alchemy Journal, and I'm Aubrey Forrest, the Modern Alchemist. That's probably the last time I'll run through the whole list of that, because the whole point of Alchemy Journal is to be a little bit less formal, but I figured since this was episode 1, I would go to the extra lengths of just covering all the bases. This is the side of the Modern Alchemist channel which allows me to kind of speak to you personally and give you updates on what's going on and the kind of things that I'm involved in right now. For instance, right now I will be offering, free to the public, I'm going to be teaching Essentials of Modern Alchemy at the Druid's Knook starting on August 23rd. 2015. The Druid's Knook is located at 528 Capitol with an O, Way South, Olympia, Washington. You can contact Dan, he's the owner, at 360-878-8901, and I will be accepting 23 students, and we'll have an overflow list, so as people decide to move on or find themselves unable to attend, then those that are in the wings can then step forward and fill up that spot and keep us at capacity. We're going to, the coursework is free and is going to continue on until we decide to stop. There's a lot to cover, and just in the basics, just in the bare essentials. We're going to start with the assumption that the members of the class do not have a background in mythology and probably do not have an extensive background in the sciences, which are two of the tools that we use in alchemy to deconstruct what is in front of us, the language which is being presented. I'm going to go ahead and just do baseline everything, which is part of the reason why I'm doing it for free. The other reason is it's as an alchemist, we all go through our own personal Rubedo, and definitely this is going to be something that is exciting for me, because I get to share now what it is that I've learned. It's very much like being an explorer and having gone to an undiscovered country and then returned and having stories to tell of the marvels that you've seen and discovered. Much of my experience as an alchemist has not been as structured as what I offer to my students. For myself, I mean, really, it's not like you just decide, hey, I'm going to do it, unless, of course, you're one of my students, and then you can. But for me, the process over the last 25 years has been rather gradual, wherein one illusion after another was gently and sometimes not so gently deconstructed, to the point where I was able to free myself and my consciousness from a lot of the stuff that impedes progress in the esoteric, and move forward. So one of the things that we'll be doing then in this class is covering pretty much everything, including chemistry. We're going to look at plasma physics and the electric universe extensively. We're going to see how that works in the natural world around us, and because I am a natural philosopher, the idea behind being a natural philosopher as a scientist is that the components which you witness in one aspect of nature can be echoed or seen in other aspects of nature, so that it comprises one great whole, as opposed to being a series of segmented, disconnected units, which is how we're taught generally in school. We're going to talk about the nature of human consciousness at great length, and what that's about. And that's because we need to understand the nature of mentalism. So the courses which I will be teaching will be recorded, and I will be posting those unedited to my YouTube channel here, the Modern Alchemist channel, and it'll be under Essentials in Practical Alchemy. I'm doing that so that you out here who can't come to Olympia and partake in this class can at least vicariously enjoy it through YouTube. I promise you that over time, this is the promise I make with all of my students, that given just enough time, and I don't need much, I promise your consciousness will change. I will. What you learn as a process of studying alchemy is consciousness altering and very empowering. And so these are the things that we'll be covering. We'll talk about the history of alchemy. We'll definitely be going through all sorts of mythological archetypes. We'll be using the Bible. Yeah, how about that? Yeah, for sure. The Holy Bible is perhaps one of the most exquisite and elegantly encoded alchemical texts ever. Once you have the correct keys to decode it, and you liberate yourself from the literal interpretation of the scripture, and recognize that the people who actually wrote those books perceived the world not as we do today, but from a Kabbalistic perspective, and that perspective is based on an understanding of a particular narrative, then those books become very valuable, because descriptions of plagues, descriptions of throne room battles between Moses and Aaron and the high priests and the Pharaoh, descriptions of David and Bathsheba and Uriah, descriptions of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob, descriptions of pretty much any of the New Testament narratives associated with the Christ, Jesus, Yeshua ben Yosef, and all of that, they all relate ultimately to astro-theology, and that is something that we will talk about at length. I am going to spend probably a lot of time just right here talking about it, just trying to fill you in. There is so much to learn, and that has certainly been the impression I have received from many of my students is that when you realize just how much has been in front of you the entire time, and you realize how much is accessible to you, and then of course you realize how much you have yet to learn, it can be overwhelming. So I would advise to everyone who studies alchemy to be patient with yourself and recognize that your consciousness as a human being has been carefully molded throughout your life, carefully molded through the language which you are taught and how you use that language, carefully molded in the process of assumption of fashion, assuming that it's just a trend instead of a means whereby consciousness could then be conveyed from one place to another. Carefully molded through music and through movies and books and the news, so that all of these environmental contexts have an extraordinary influence on you, and then that, coupled with just biological propensities, leaves you with who you are. I mean, we're going to talk about human consciousness. We'll talk about free will in these classes at length. And that's why I'm saying this stuff, I'm excited to go through it. I have and to just have an opportunity to allow a larger group of people to participate in what I've learned. As far as I know, the method that I use and the means by which I am decoding what I am perceiving around us, these are not openly or broadly taught. In fact, everything that we talk about on this channel, this will not be for the basics. There are plenty of those channels available for you if you want to kind of languish in the basics. I want to give you guys some meat. I want to give you guys some stuff to really chew on and think about. We live in a world where people just starve for meaning. like a person languishing in a desert, and they have no idea that the world is just absolutely replete with meaning, absolutely replete, and that every form of communication which we use is layered in meaning, layered in potential and cognitive strength and structuring. So anyway, that's what we're going to talk about. Again, I'll be teaching these classes at the Druid's Knook in Downtown Olympia. They will start on the 23rd of August at 4 p.m. sharp. So please be there. Now, this is the one thing that I stipulate, since these classes are free, is that you take them seriously. So that if you sign up, if you live locally and you sign up, you attend. And realizing that your choice to not attend is actually altering the path of someone else who might have wanted to be there but couldn't because you had assumed their slot. So that would be really my biggest request. And the other is that you assume responsibility to study this stuff, to learn it, to test it. Really test it. Test everything I say. I would love it. I am where I'm at because I rigorously test everything. I'm the ultimate skeptic. I cannot stand Fluffy Bunny. I'm skeptical of a vast majority of people that claim genuine psychic power. And I do know some people that are in fact gifted. There are means, established means, of developing, however, access to psychism, as is discussed in many of the texts. And this, of course, is through a rigorous application of understanding the archetypes as presented Kabbalistically and through mythology, and recognizing the astro-theological constructs upon which they're based. So that when you draw your consciousness upon those sources of electromagnetic energy, you're actually making an appeal to the correct avenue. That's what it's all about, really, is structuring your thinking. When everything is ultimately mentalism, structuring your thinking is everything, right? So we're going to cover all of that. And then more. I mean, whatever, if there are things that the students present would like to see covered, we'll do that as well. I'm flexible. I have lots of time for that. So there you have it. This is kind of what we're going to do also through these alchemy journals. I'll probably take my camera with me places so that I can illustrate points more directly, and then we'll just pop it on here. I'm going to work outside my own personal comfort zone by simply accepting the fact that you could be sitting right here in front of me, and I don't have an opportunity to edit the comment that I make to you, and so I'm talking to you as if you were right here, and of course, some of my friends might say, wow, that's not unlike normal conversations, a bit one-sided. No, it's not true. But I definitely, I consider you here, and so if I'm flawed in my presentation, or if I tend to lose track of my thinking, it's because that sometimes happens. And the thing that always keeps me on track is if you were actually here. One other thing, of those people who live in Olympia who are going to attend the class, if any of you have experience operating regular video cameras and would like to assist in the filming of the class, please leave me an email here at the Modern Alchemist channel at gmail.com, and I'll be getting back to you. Let's see what else. That's all I got for you right now. But I definitely want to talk more later. I definitely want to have an opportunity to discuss a great many things, and things perhaps clarify stuff that I may have mentioned in Ask an Alchemist or whatever. This isn't really an Ask an Alchemist type thing. If you have questions, please keep firing those off to me. This is more of just kind of me sharing, one drop at a time, how I have learned to see the world, and the kind of exchange of consciousness that takes place, the kind of transition in thinking that takes place, the freeing of your mind that takes place as a result of understanding these processes and witnessing them externally outside of yourself as then also within. And then the one thing that I suppose that we should discuss before I go is one of my other standards that I instruct my students, and I'm going to tell you right now. You need to realize that there are people out there that are smarter than you, and not by just a little bit. There are people out there that are orders of magnitude smarter than you, largely because they have had congress with the correct means of ordering their thinking and structuring it in such a way so as to gain broader access to insights, knowledge, and creativity. It is genius. True genius is the result of one's capacity to abdicate the generative aspect of their thinking and recognize that they have only cognitive custody. Then, in that process of custodian of your cognitive process, you enjoy and perhaps nuance the experience, but you can't always lay claim to it. Anybody who's walked in the bedroom and stubbed their toe knows exactly what I mean. That's extraordinarily consciousness altering for perhaps several minutes, and whatever you were thinking of before then is completely gone. We're going to talk about free will and a number of other things, but ultimately, I guess I sort of lost track of where I was going with that. Welcome to my brain. Ultimately, well, it doesn't matter. See? Here we are. If only you were here, then you could have at least told me where I was going. And no, I'm not going to rewind this to figure out where I was going. Obviously, it doesn't matter. I probably said enough. We'll be spending time in Egyptology. We'll be spending time in other ancient mythologies like Greece and Rome. I'm going to stick with the more standard mythological constructs of the West, largely because those are what I am familiar with. However, we'll also talk about Hinduism, and I'm going to share with you some of my insights relating to Hinduism, and these are practical insights that I think modern Egyptologists have completely overlooked. The fact, for instance, that Hinduism and the ancient Egyptian religions and their pantheons were concurrent, meaning that traders who traveled from India to Egypt and back and forth, and it has been established that there were trade routes that did exactly that, understood a common religious experience nuanced only by cultural variation from one continent to another. But the impression then, see, we're still looking, this is just a brief sidebar, but with regard to Egyptology, we're still evaluating it based on Victorian precepts. So God, Jesus Christ, and monotheism, and we assume that polytheistic structures relate to a division of a characteristic between the different entities. When in fact, just like with Hinduism, the division is only superficial. They are all an expression of the same all, or entity, the same complete deity. Similarly, if you analyze Egyptology through an astro-theological construct, understanding that they were also considering things from a monotheistic standpoint, then the polytheism begins to take on a simpler light. You begin to understand the necessity of all the dualism and a lot of the narratives suddenly snap right into focus. All right, so hopefully I've wet your whistle. One thing that I'd like you all to think about between now and the next time, I would like to think you to open up your Bible, and when you get to the end of the creation of the first day, I want you to ask yourself a question. Why is daytime measured from evening until morning? Why is it from the evening until the morning was the first day, and the second day, and the third? Why is that? What is the effect on consciousness when we look into the sky at nighttime as opposed to looking at the sky during the daytime? What is presented nighttime and daytime? And if you assume that our night sky was radically different than it is now, that certain celestial bodies like Jupiter and Saturn were far more proximate than they are now, within visible distance, wherein detail could be made out on their surfaces, then you have an entirely different understanding of the significance of astro-theology, the significance of alchemy, and its relationship on you and everything around you. Okay? And ultimately, it's electric. It's the ultimate story is electric, and by being electric, then it, of course, converts back into mentalism, because our mental processes, everything about us, everything that comprises our conscious state is electric. So we too are as the universe is, and as the universe is, so shall we become. So anyway, I will talk to you guys later. I think this was a pretty good first episode. Let me know what you think in the comments section below. And if there is something you'd like me just to chit-chat about for a minute, I'm happy to do that. Otherwise, I literally have a laundry list of stuff that's just awesome to cover. And for instance, just to wet your whistle, why vampires are Saturnian and why werewolves are Luciferian. A discussion on the Wadjet eye and how it is different from the Eye of Horus and why that's important to you personally. A discussion of the day boat of the gods of Egypt and its transit through the sky, and of course perhaps further discussion on this whole business of evening to morning, and a discussion on linguistics and what it means for a word to be a word, for a word to be a word, the way it sounds, that's the word. So let's see. Oh, and then of course there's my cactus hypothesis of planetary and stellar development, which is a extrapolation of electric universe principles borne out in botany. Yeah. So there's lots to talk about. So I will talk to you guys later. You have a wonderful day, and we'll be seeing you.